Hello, my beautiful friends. It is an amazing day, and we are waiting for the tubes to connect themselves before we jump into the business on the day. And there is some interesting items that have been percolating since we've last been together. And before we jump into it, though, got to make sure things have connected themselves, and they have. Eureka. Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Before we jump into the details, let's get a preview on what is coming up here today, because we have some new filings and some new litigation afoot. Starting off over in Florida today, because we've got the Attorney General there. Her name is Ashley Moody. We've heard from her before on Team DeSantis, and she's now bringing it against Joe Biden and Kamala Harris for interfering with the Trump investigation into the second assassination attempt that the DOJ is currently conducting. Yeah, right. So she says, will you please knock it off? She has now filed a claim on Injunction, has a press release that they have dropped here from the state of Florida, explaining that they're trying to meddle in the state's affairs. And we have a lot of questions about the DOJ, the FBI, Homeland Security investigations, and the thoroughness of their investigations, because we know that they're not thorough at all. And so you can see she filed this out of the Southern District of Florida, and we're going to be going through this document. It's an 18-pager, and she'll be articulating what happened there when they were in West Palm Beach at Trump International Golf Club, when Trump was rounding one hole, emerging into another hole, and almost got taken out again. So we'll see what the deal is, and more specifically, how the FBI and the DOJ are meddling and interrupting what is happening there. So all that is coming up. And then we have the new 911 calls that have also been released. So Fox News got their hands on a couple of them. Harris Faulkner in particular sent this one in, clipped for us. And we'll listen to what it sounded like when that attempt occurred. This is from Butler. So 2 assassination updates, one in Florida, one in Butler. Then we'll turn our attention to the actual criminal prosecution of Ryan Routh. Remember him? He was the shooter who didn't get shot in the head and eliminated and had his body burned in 10 days before Congress could even come and participate and examine anything, the same day that Congress was creating their joint committee to investigate create their task force to investigate the assassination, rather. Body was torched for the other guy, Matthew Crooks. But Ryan Routh, however, did not have his head exploded, and he is still being prosecuted. And so his case has had some developments, because you can see this case got assigned to Judge Eileen Cannon. This is his prosecution out of the Southern District of Florida. And they do not want Judge Cannon to be on the case. And so they filed a motion to recuse. And what's so funny about this is the DOJ is saying that he should actually stay on, or she should stay on. Judge Cannon should stay on. And that's curious, because we know the DOJ had a rough time in their prosecution of Donald Trump in the Florida case, where their classified documents case, who was dismissed. Goodbye. So it's funny that they're like, well, we kind of like Judge Cannon now, even though we don't like her in the other case. And the Democrats are now kind of catching themselves in a precarious position, because do they want the DOJ to go after Judge Cannon, or are they competent, or what's the deal? So they want Cannon to stay on the case. So we'll read through both of those filings. This one you can see the government is now saying we actually don't need to get rid of Judge Cannon. This is Ryan Routh's filing saying that she should be recused. Government is responding and saying, no, she should not. She's perfectly fine on this case. And we know she's amazing. We love Judge Cannon here. And so we'll go through those 2 filings. Then I've got some updates on some election shenanigans that are afoot right now. Bunch of weird little updates, so we'll just poke through them relatively quickly. But you'll see short update from Georgia. They said that there was a cyber attack today, or yesterday rather. And Raffensperger says they fended it off, which is good news. Raffensperger, very trustworthy fella, along with Fannie Willis over there in Fulton County. So, okay, a cyber attack's happening in Georgia. We've got early ballot label printing problems in Wisconsin. We've got fires in Arizona that are impacting ballots in P.O. boxes, and the list goes on and on. Now, Trump is considering pardoning Hunter Biden, which will be hysterical. Can't wait to see what Garrett Ziegler says about that. And then Tish James is out there with Chuck Schumer shaking her Tish on the streets of New York. And so we've got a bunch of stuff to get to. As you can see, my friends, it's a beautiful day, and we're glad that you're here and with us. We know Trump is in Arizona. Trump is in Tempe, just a stone's throw away over there today. And he's got a rally cooking right now. And so if you're out there, we hope you're having an amazing time supporting the president. And more specifically, wherever it is you are, we hope you're getting your ballots completed and sent in the mail. All right, we're walking these puppies down to a Dropbox tomorrow. We'll make a video about it tomorrow for our membos. And it is essential. We get our stuff in, get it done. If you're thinking about waiting a couple days like I did, don't be like me. Don't be like me. Get it in. So good, already voted. Shout out. Go vote in person, says Stetson. It's fine if you want to vote in person. Just make sure that happens too. I just want to make sure we're getting those ballots in. All right, so we're going in tomorrow. All right, that's it. Getting those votes in. And in Arizona, we can confirm that they're received, so we'll be doing that too. All right, so my friends, we got a bunch of stuff to get to today. Before we get to it, you know what is very important in our lives? Staying hydrated. It's essential. We got to drink water and drink other things that make us healthy. 75% of Americans do not consume enough fluid daily. And as we change naturally, our body changes, and it makes it even harder to stay hydrated, especially when we're drinking all this stuff with additives, excess sugar, and all that stuff. But we don't have to worry about that because we have Native Path, which is here with extra help. Now, it's not just another drink mix from Native Path. No, it's a specially designed formula packed with BCAAs, all 9 essential amino acids, muscle recovery, and overall vitality coming soon to you. Now, it's completely sugar-free, 100% natural. They've got a native Hydrate product. You can fuel your body with essential electrolytes that are going to fuel your cells like you've never seen before. Now, unlike other mixes, this contains upwards of 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 230 grams. Others have thousands milligrams of sodium. They just have 230 milligrams of sodium, which is much better. Okay, all the drinks, you don't want all that extra sodium. Doesn't have artificial flavors, no sugars, no dyes, only 5 calories, and you can get some and have a 365-day money-back guarantee. So check it out, nativehydrate.com/Robert. Link is down in the description below. And get your hydration on with our friends at Native Hydrate. All right, so thanks for supporting our sponsors. And I do like myself some nice drink mixes because we do need to stay hydrated. It is important, especially here in Arizona. Gets hot here. All right, so my friends, let's get to it because we've got some business to attend to. An injunction against Biden and Harris and their corrupt DOJ is what Ashley Moody from Florida is demanding. She's the attorney general there, and she says that the Harris-Biden administration is interfering and attempting to block Florida's investigation into the second assassination attempt of President Trump. Wonder why that might be. Now, we see this all the time in the movies where the feds roll in and they say, oh, it's our jurisdiction now. We're taking over this investigation. And, you know, that might make sense in certain situations when you don't have a corrupt DOJ. But when this is happening here, Florida has an interest in making sure that their citizens are protected, and President Trump resides there and has a lot of property there. And so they're doing their due diligence as well, since the DOJ has seemingly been corrupt and neglectful over these last many years. So she released this, says we are now going to be demanding an injunction. They submitted a full filing here that we'll go through, but let's take a look at her press release. She says they filed a lawsuit in federal court against the DOJ over the DOJ's unlawful attempt to block Florida's investigation into the Trump assassination. They said that they're going to do their own independent state investigation to ensure that the state laws are being enforced, which is their right. Now, within days, however, the DOJ came in there and they said, you better suspend this. This is our jurisdiction. Now, they say the state of Florida has been clear A dual-track investigation would be in the best interest of all parties. It's not lost on us that the American people have concerns about federal agencies exclusively handling this matter at the same time that they're trying to prosecute him and put him in jail. It's the same agency. Now, given that the Department of Justice is preventing our independent investigation from proceeding, we filed a lawsuit to ensure that Florida can take appropriate action and enforce its laws. Now, after Florida announced that they would be conducting an independent investigation, Ron DeSantis signed Executive Order 24197, directing Florida law enforcement and their partners to investigate this and determine whether there were other state crimes that emanated from Ryan Routh's actions. Now, as explained in the complaint that we'll read, they're saying there are multiple violations of items that they're allowed to do. And as reflected in the exhibits, the DOJ was impeding Florida agents, wasn't even giving them access to crime scenes. Now, they're explaining how the DOJ is misreading the law and why they are wrong. And so let's get into it. Florida versus Merrick Garland at the DOJ, demanding a declaration and an order against the DOJ for meddling and impeding their investigation into Trump. 18-pager filed in the Southern District of Florida, where we've spent a lot of time in other cases. But here is what the state AG says. All right, Merrick Garland. In just a 2-month period, President Trump has faced 2 credible attempts to take his life. Isn't that convenient? Now, in one attempt, a gunman fired shots at Trump's head, nearly killing him, and was even able to wound his ear. The alleged failures by the Secret Service with respect to that event were so severe that the head of the agency resigned right after she admitted they didn't retain any actual radio communications or other evidence that would show how this all went down. And bad. Now, in the other attempt, a gunman was able to hide for nearly 12 hours near the 6th green of the Trump International Golf Club in West Palm Beach, Florida. And by the time the Secret Service found the shooter, he made it within several hundred yards of President Trump. So 2 days after the second assassination attempt, on September 17th, Ron DeSantis, the governor, signed an executive order. And that order directed Florida law enforcement partners to determine whether state charges should be brought. Within the days of the governor signing that order, guess what happened? The feds, FBI, under supervision by the DOJ, they indicated that Florida must suspend its investigation. Now, as the basis for this demand, the feds came in, they cited U.S. code, which purports to temporarily suspend state authority when the feds come in and investigate an assassination attempt. Now, in conversations with federal officials and in subsequent correspondence, these officials have stated that Florida may not conduct its own investigation, may not interview witnesses, and may only cooperate with the federal government's investigation. However, Ashley Moody, the state AG of Florida, says wrong, because this section of the law actually does not prohibit our conduct, and because it would violate the 10th Amendment if it reached so far, Florida sues to vindicate its sovereign interest to investigate state violations of state law, as delay may impact the outcome of any prosecution, and the rights that are not enumerated and granted to the federal government are retained by the states. And they're saying we don't have that right anymore? Wrong. They say the parties here are the state of Florida, where Trump resides, Ashley Moody, the state AG, versus Merrick Garland, failed Supreme Court candidate and crybaby who doesn't like to be criticized. Jurisdictions in Florida, because Trump almost got shot there. Garland is the lead of the U.S. DOJ, the Attorney General for the federal government. Now, we're in Florida because that's where this all occurred. Getting into the complaint, they explain from Florida. All right, on September 15th, President Trump played a round of golf at Trump International Golf Club in Florida. Now, during that round, the Secret Service discovered an armed gunman, later identified as Ryan Wesley Routh, hiding near the 6th green. Secret Service agent Fired at his position, Routh fled on foot and later by car. Officers of Martin County Sheriff's Office, in coordination with the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office, later located Mr. Routh and took him into custody. Now, it is reasonably clear from all facts and circumstances, including a note authored by Mr. Routh himself, that Mr. Routh intended to assassinate President Trump. This was the second assassination attempt on President Trump in as many months. In the first attempt, a gunman was able to shoot President Trump in the ear and nearly kill him. During the first attempt in Butler, the Secret Service failed to discharge its duties in a variety of ways, including by allowing the gunman to access a rooftop with a clear line of sight to President Trump, and within days of these failures, the head of the Secret Service resigned. And then a few days later, they burned the body. With respect to the second attempt, similar concerns have been raised, such as how a gunman managed to get so close to President Trump and hide for 12 hours undetected, and set up body armor on a fence. 2 days after this second attempt in Florida, Ron DeSantis issued an order, said, investigate this. Those charges may ultimately include attempted murder, fleeing and eluding, charges related to his unlawful possession of a firearm because he had multiple criminal convictions. As a convicted felon, shouldn't have had possession, so could have charged him murder under Florida statute there, 78204. Attempted crimes, fleeing and eluding, felon in possession, prohibited possession. Additionally, the state may pursue charges against Routh stemming from injuries caused by his flight from law enforcement after the assassination attempt. Now, almost immediately, however, as soon as Florida started to look into this, federal officials began taking steps to halt the state's investigation. Stop looking into this. This was the guy who went back and forth to Ukraine. You remember that? Now, only a few days after Governor DeSantis signed the executive order, FBI agent in charge, Jeffrey Veltri, who hates Trump, as we've talked about here, called the FDLE, special agent in charge, Florida, looks like feds called local, in Fort Pierce. During that call, Mr. Veltri directed local law enforcement to U.S. code. He says, what do you think you're doing? He says, we're investigating state crimes. We have the authority to do that. He says, no, I don't think you do. He says, well, I think we do. Well, I'd like to direct you to U.S. code. He says, well, I read it. Oh, you did? Yeah, I did. Veltri. Well, did you read section 351? Yeah, I'm looking at it. Well, look at section F. How about that? I'm reading it right now. Well, it says we have authority. That's not our interpretation, and I've got guidance from the state attorney general, Ashley Moody. Something like that. Now, Mr. Veltri did so, even though at that time the federal government had only charged Mr. Routh with firearms-related charges and didn't even charge him with attempted assassination. Now, this law purports to suspend the exercise of a jurisdiction where there is an attempted assassination, but that hadn't happened yet. And he says, so we're investigating ourselves. Get out of here, loser fed. In a subsequent, shout out to that sheriff for that great combo. Now, in a subsequent meeting between Florida's statewide prosecutor, Nicholas Cox, and U.S. Attorney Mackenzie LaPointe of SDF, Southern District of Florida, the U.S. Attorney again mentioned 351F. So again, they said, we haven't charged him with that. Now, in this meeting, U.S. Attorney LaPointe suggested that Florida should not interview witnesses until the federal investigation was completed. Well, maybe we are going to charge him with that, but we haven't charged him yet, so we're going to charge him. So don't investigate him because we are going to step in and then utilize this when it is right. So in light of these statements and other attempts to block Florida's investigation, then Ashley Moody, the Attorney General, says, hey, sends a letter back over to these people, U.S. Attorney, DOJ prosecutor, and the FBI director, and sends that in Exhibit 1, which I don't think we have. Says, the letter covered several things. First, she tells the FBI the following. Says, you know, feds, there is a lack of public confidence in federal investigations. Say that again. We will. There is a lack of public confidence in federal investigations. Ooh, that was good. Now, the Secret Service and their repeated failures to adequately protect Trump, the federal government's ongoing prosecution of the victim, President Trump, they're prosecuting him in 2 different locations. They're appealing him. They raided his house, right? They raided his house. Well, we're going to make sure he doesn't get shot. Like, you almost shot him when you raided his house with armed FBI agents and had a use of force policy that authorized lethal force if necessary. That's why you raided him. I don't care if it's a form. It's still in the document. Now, the fact that Mr. Veltri, who is leading the investigation, hates Trump and has made statements in the past that some believe demonstrate a bias against Trump, which we've read here, hates the guy, posted a bunch of social media stuff. And before he became special agent in charge there in, I think the field office is in Miami, then he had to, address those social media posts because he's so rabid and filled with TDS. He's in charge of the investigation. So forgive us if we're not enthusiastic and in favor of believing he'll get to the bottom of it. Now, the letter further noted that, quote, having Florida conduct its own investigation would mitigate public concern regarding the credibility and the reliability of these institutions. Would you be more satisfied, just ask yourself this one, with a report from local cops or from the federal agencies on this particular case? I think obviously we know the answer to that. It's an easy question. Do we have a reference for that? Of course we do. Yeah. It was the Butler shooting number 1. Guess who had the blame game playing 24/7 initially? The Secret Service did. Remember when the new acting director who came in sat there and said, why didn't they just look to the left and look out the window? They could have seen crooks and all those things. No, you couldn't have. And we saw that because the local cops had to get out there and defend themselves. The Secret Service was smearing the local cops, who were the credible ones, who were there in a support capacity. The Secret Service carrying the primary responsibility to protect the protectee, not the local cops. And then they got blamed for it. And what we heard from them when they were testifying in Congress and elsewhere was 1,000 times more credible than anything the Secret Service said. So yeah, forgive us. Now, second, the letter also noted, and I'm happy that she sent this to Christopher Wray, noted as a legal matter that general references to this Section 351 in a verbal conversation were likely insufficient to invoke that. Okay, so like if you're going to come in here and steal our jurisdiction from us, you don't just get to say it flippantly in a voicemail, all right? Send something. The letter asked for clarification about whether 351 was being formally invoked. Are you seizing our jurisdiction? And if so, what you believe this provision prohibits and how the federal government would enforce it. So if you're stealing our authority to investigate this, since you're prosecuting Trump and you hate Trump and the special agent in charge also hates Trump, and this is the second time that the executive branch has allowed Trump to almost get killed, we would like to know what we're not allowed to do to investigate this. And if we do that, what are you going to do about it, Chris? Notably, when General Moody sent that letter, Attorney General from Florida, the DOJ had only charged him with illegal possession of firearms, which was initial, right? They needed to keep him on something, and so that's what that was. The DOJ had not charged him with any violation of Section 351. Now, after the DOJ received General Moody's letter, the DOJ then charged him with a violation of 351C, which prohibits the attempted assassination of a presidential candidate. So then on September 30th, a week after receiving Florida's letter, U.S. Attorney LaPont, so another prosecutor for the government, sent a response back to Florida. The letter from the prosecutor claimed that the federal indictment returned last week, which postdates your letter, resolves any potential uncertainty about whether this applies here. So she says, can you give me some clarification on the F? And F will say that if somebody's charged with these sections or something, then you can't, we have the authority. And so she says, well, I'm not telling you whether we're invoking this or not. We charged him with another subsection of this statute. And so therefore you can read into that what that means. However, she says, well, you didn't answer my question because you charged him with C. We're asking if you're invoking F. So U.S. Attorney LaPointe, the letter didn't provide any response to Moody and any guidance about F. What does it prohibit? Okay, if you're invoking this, doesn't mean I can't take pictures. Doesn't mean I can't interview witnesses. Am I allowed to get copies of evidence? What am I allowed to do? And if I'm prohibited from doing that list of things, what are you going to do if we do it anyways? So following this unequivocal assertion of F, the federal government almost immediately asked the trial court to assign to the criminal case to remove the case from the trial calendar until further notice. And it was unopposed. They designated this as a complex case. And so they continue. Now, here's the background. Here's the law. Section 351 prohibits the killing, kidnapping, or the assaulting of a variety of individuals. You see there's A, C, and E. Now, these individual members are people of Congress, members of Congress, certain high-ranking executive branch officials, justices of the Supreme Court, nominees for certain positions, major presidential, vice presidential candidates, all defined under the law. Now, Section F says, if federal investigative or prosecutive jurisdiction is asserted for a violation of this, like if you try to eliminate one of those people, that assertion shall suspend local authority until federal action is terminated. Suspend the exercise of jurisdiction. Now, it appears, says Moody from Florida, that no court has ever interpreted this provision. So what does it mean? But applying traditional principles and statutory interpretation, the statute is far narrower than the DOJ asserts, right? The DOJ is like, we're in charge of everything, so you can't do anything at all. Florida's like, yeah, right. Now, specifically, all the statute prohibits is the state's exercise of jurisdiction under any applicable state or local law until federal action is terminated. Now, the phrase exercise of jurisdiction, since no court has ever had to deal with this before, what does it mean? Well, it does not refer to all investigatory actions, okay? It refers to the formal exercise of jurisdiction over a person or a thing, which is namely a seizure. So in other words, we can investigate as long as we're not charging, as long as we're not arresting. First, the phrase exercise jurisdiction stands in contrast to the phrase assert jurisdiction, which is what the DOJ must do to trigger the statute. Now, given this contrast, exercising jurisdiction, which is what they're saying we are prohibited from doing, involves something more significant than asserting jurisdiction. For example, if someone asserts a right to vote, that person may take a number of actions short of actually casting a ballot, right? It's kind of broader. Well, I have a right. Doesn't mean you actually are doing the thing. If someone seeks to exercise that right, however, that person may only do so by actually voting. So it's narrower. So in other words, we're only stopped from casting a ballot, but we're not stopped from having a right to cast a ballot, kind of an analogy. Now, second, and relatedly, the phrase exercise jurisdiction is most frequently used in a manner consistent with Florida's reading of the statute, which means taking a person or a thing into custody. Exercising jurisdiction, in other words, arises most often in applying the rule of comity. Under that rule, when a state government and a federal government both assert jurisdiction over the same thing, the court, which first takes the subject matter of the litigation into its control, whether it's person or property, is permitted to exhaust its remedy to attain which it assumed control before the other court shall take it for its purpose. So we're kind of thinking of a case like a hot potato and passing it around. Now, in these cases, the first court to take custody of the person or thing triggers the rule, and they exercise jurisdiction over the person or the thing, first to the person. Now, applying this understanding of jurisdiction says that the federal grants the federal government a right to custody Mr. Routh, even if the state arrests him first. In other words, the purpose of this is merely to modify the rule of comity, which would otherwise compel the federal government to wait for the state to prosecute and incarcerate Mr. Routh before it could do so. So basically they're saying, all right, look, the state law enforcement held him physically first. So if we did not have 351F, The regular rule would be under, this common law idea, the older rule and without a statute that supersedes it, which is what they're saying exists now, would say that the first entity that holds the guy gets him first. So the state prosecutes him first. Once they're done, they pass it off to the feds. Congress said, well, a supremacy clause and federal rights mean that we're going to pass this law so that if you capture him first, we still can prosecute him first. We just take him from you and now he's ours. But that's it, is what Moody is saying. She says, well, we can still investigate him and do everything else. It doesn't mean our case is done if you go first. Like, we're going to get him next, after. So we can still do our due diligence to investigate him, obviously. They say, look, the state did arrest Mr. Routh first, and they complied with this rule by acquiescing to the federal government. They gave Mr. Routh to the feds. So finally, even if the state's reading is only one of multiple plausible readings, the court should adopt our reading instead. As explained, the federal government and their reading would raise a substantial question because it would render that section of the law unconstitutional under the 10th Amendment to basically say, well, they explain it in this next section. They say, the 10th Amendment to the United States says, the powers not delegated to the feds by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively, or to us, we, the people. So if it's not explicit, if it doesn't go to the feds, if it, this is not an enumerated thing that the federal government can do, or it's not prohibited, then it's reserved. We keep it. Now, that has obviously been perverted over the years. The government has given itself a lot more power at the expense. Things that were reserved to us have been absconded away from us and commandeered by our bloated, bureaucratic, disgusting federal government. But the point is, if they're saying, wait, you're also taking away from us the right to investigate, this is nuts. This amendment confirms that the Constitution confers on Congress not plenary legislative power, meaning they can't do whatever the hell they want, limitless. There's enumerated power, okay? It's explicit. You can do certain things. And then they say, well, but the Commerce Clause says we can regulate everything, including everything you ever touched in your life. And thus all other legislative power is reserved for the states. Now, as is relevant here, the Supreme Court has interpreted the 10th Amendment to impose an anti-commandeering rule. Under that rule, the federal government may not command the state's officers or those of their political subdivisions to administer or enforce a Fed program. Unconstitutional commandeering can include ordering state officials to take some action, like conducting background checks. Now, the way they do this is with the power of the purse. Okay, they just say, do you want federal money? If you want federal money, you're going to pass state laws that comply with our federal requirements. And then the states say, sure, because we still have to pay federal income tax unless Trump gets rid of it, as there is conversation about recently, which would be absolutely incredible. Now, and it can only also involve, it can also involve ordering state officials not to do something, right? Like, don't do these things. Now, commandeering, however, is different from federal preemption. Preemption occurs as a result of the Supremacy Clause, which says that in the Constitution, federal law is the supreme law of the land, unfortunately. But that clause is not an independent grant of legislative power to Congress. It simply provides a rule of decision. And when a federal law preempts a state law confers rights or imposes restrictions that conflict with federal law, the federal law reigns supreme. Now, the Constitution also confers upon Congress the power to regulate individuals and not states. As such, if it's valid preemption, it must regulate private actors. Now, by contrast, a federal law that dictates what state officials may and may not do is not a valid preemption provision and violates the anti-commandeering rule of the 10th Amendment, which means you're basically telling us not to conduct our investigation. So you're commandeering our investigation in violation of the 10th Amendment. Now, the mere fact that a state like us in Florida may not carry out our own right to investigate the violations of our own laws, that is a sovereign injury sufficient to trigger Article 3 jurisdiction in this court. But this state, our concrete injuries go beyond that harm to our sovereignty. It's much worse than this. In fact, according to the federal prosecutor, U.S. Attorney LaPointe, Florida law enforcement officials may not conduct any investigative activities of their own until after the feds are done. Okay, so it doesn't mean prosecute, doesn't mean arrest him, doesn't mean subpoena him, issue search warrants. They can't investigate in anything until after they're done, once all the evidence is destroyed. This means, according to the federal government, the state may not interview witnesses, execute warrants, or subpoenas, do anything. Nothing. That is significant. Evidence disappears. Memories fade. The state has no way to force the federal government to cooperate in the state's prosecution at all. So the feds come in, gobble up all the evidence, can't do anything until after the conclusion of the prosecution. And that's it. Every day that Florida is prevented from investigating, the state's case becomes harder and harder to prove at trial. By contrast, the feds have no injury at all. The state has no intention of interfering with or obstructing them. And so this is what we want. We want a declaration. And you're empowered to do this. Courts normally do not require plaintiffs to bet the farm, but the federal government here has demonstrated a genuine threat of enforcing this section of the law to stop the state of Florida from investigating the latest assassination attempt. As discussed above, they've told us in writing that this section of the law is in effect, and they've told state officials that basic investigative activities like simple interviews, or making a subpoena for information, or issuing arrest warrants, all illegal. Can't do any of it. Not just charging him, right, or making an arrest. He's already in federal custody. Maybe you could say charge him later or something, or charge him now, and he's in federal custody, and that case will be put on hold until he's returned from custody. Now, what? Okay. Many ways to do it, but they can't investigate anything is the point. Now, moreover, the federal government indicated in its letter it will not allow Florida to access the evidence until after the feds have concluded their own investigation. You only get it when we're done. But they say this law does not prevent that at all. In no way does it preclude the state from following this and investigating in their own capacity. The federal government dramatically overreads this section of the law. It merely modifies the traditional rule of comity, which allows the federal government to take custody over Routh over the state, but we're still allowed to investigate this. And so we need a declaration to clarify whether the feds can lawfully prevent Florida and their team from investigating whether there were state crimes here. We also have another cause of action saying that they should be enjoined. Stop the federal government from interfering in our investigation, because enforcement of this, of anything that would prohibit us from doing our own investigation, would be illegal executive action. Count 3 is a violation of the 10th Amendment, saying the 10th Amendment operates directly on the states by leaving state law completely intact, is what they're trying to do. And here, at least on the DOJ's reading, it doesn't regulate private individuals at all, but they're regulating the state. They're saying the state can't investigate this. And even though we have the supremacy clause, it doesn't apply here, and they're encroaching on a state power. And so for these reasons, Ashley Moody, State AG of Florida, sends this one in, says they want to declare that Florida may conduct its own investigation without encroaching on the feds, or at least declare that section of the law unconstitutional, stop the DOJ and the feds from enforcing this section of the law that would prevent Florida from conducting its own investigation, and give us attorney's fees, respectfully submitted by Ashley Moody, Attorney General, and the team over there in Florida. Great stuff to see them pushing back against the feds, because we know they can't be trusted at all. In fact, they have been responsible for creating evidence of crimes against Trump. They came in there, as we talked about with ex-CIA lawyer Joseph Sweeney, who wrote that book, Dangerous Injustice, explained that They brought in cover sheets on there to make the evidence at Mar-a-Lago look bad. They raided the place, dropped photos on the ground, took photos, smeared them, right? They're trying to make it worse against Trump, not get justice on behalf of Trump. It's the last thing on their minds. And so they're in charge of this, and they're trying to muscle the state out of it. No thanks. Glad to see this is percolating there in Florida because the feds are incompetent. In fact, we are now hearing some 911 calls from their first incompetence, where the executive branch via the Secret Service and Homeland couldn't stop a shooter from getting on a sloped roof and taking shot at Trump's head. Here was one of the 911 call reports captured over from Fox.
Breaking news now. We have received more than a dozen 911 calls from the first assassination attempt on former President Trump. Remember, it was not long ago, that very first time. He's had an attempt since then. This time he was shot, though, and he survived during a rally in Butler County, Pennsylvania. I'm hearing this with you for the first time. Let's listen.
Me too, Harris.
At the Trump rally.
Yep, the police are on the way.
Well, you better get over here quick. We are at the Trump assembly, and there's a guy shooting. The Butler Fair, it's getting shot up.
They just tried to kill President Trump. You might want to make a note of that.
Yeah, well, we're already aware of it.
Yeah, you might want to make a note of that, the caller said. I want to remember now someone...
Pretty important day, and we remember that as well. Shocking day. It's still unbelievable that happened, but hopefully the investigations are continuing on with some actual investigatory work happening from the officials who are looking into it, because so far it's been very strange behavior, even in Butler. As we saw, as Congress was forming their joint committee, they were torching the body and eliminating evidence, spraying off the blood from the top of the FBI building. All normal stuff is what they told us. Other people do not concur. So we'll keep our eye on that one. Thanks for subscribing, my friends, as we do. Now we'll stick with this assassination stuff because we've got another update. And this is in the case of Ryan Routh himself. And we're going over to Florida for this one. And let's make sure here we are. Yes. Ryan Routh, the second Trump assassin, would-be assassin, is now trying to get Judge Cannon kicked off his case. He's being prosecuted for multiple crimes there related to his hiding in the bushes and trying to shoot Trump as he turned the golf course corner. He is now in Eileen Cannon's courtroom. And we remember who Eileen Cannon is because she was the judge who dismissed the classified documents case against Trump. And so what is happening here is the defendant, the assassin, Ryan Routh, is trying to get rid of her. He submitted a motion to recuse her, and the government is responding. And so let's take a look at what is happening here. This is Ryan Routh's original filing. He submitted a 7-pager. The Trump assassin is now in court attempting to defend himself here. And one of the first operations is to get rid of the judge. Says, all right, now it's time to get rid of Judge Cannon. Judge Cannon's amazing. She's the judge, really the only judge in all of the Trump prosecutions who's given him a fair shake at all. So they say, look, in a filing less than 2 pages long, the government opposes Routh's motion to get rid of Cannon. But the government does not even meaningfully respond to what we talked about. Now, curiously, they say that they begin by stating that this court's discretion to recuse is subject to review only for the abuse of discretion. And so let's back up here. So they're replying to this. So here is the original opposition from the government. And this is the short motion that they're referencing. It's very short. Should have started here. But they say, look, all right, Your Honor, the government opposes Routh's motion to recuse. This court's discretion to recuse from this matter is subject to review only for abuse of discretion. Cannon doesn't want to go off the case, and the government is agreeing. Let's keep her on. Here, Routh's motion does not cite any authority that mandates you have to get rid of yourself here, Judge Cannon. and does not present either facts or case law requiring a recusal on the record in light of these standards. Judges are obligated to recuse only when there are proper grounds to do so, and Routh doesn't have any of those presented here. Several cases. There's no support whatsoever that a judge can be disqualified based simply on the identity of the president who appointed him, right? They're saying, so one argument for recusal is, well, Trump appointed her, and I tried to shoot Trump. So if she's biased, well, that's not good enough. Some president appointed all the judges, right? Ordinarily, a judge's ruling in the same or related case may not serve as the basis for a recusal motion. Another case example says a judge having been assigned to a case should not recuse himself on unsupported, irrational, or highly tenuous speculation and more. And so in summary, Routh and his motion does not present a sufficient legal or factual basis to disqualify you, Judge Cannon, signed by U.S. attorneys John Shipley. And it's fun to watch this because they just had their entire case dismissed out of Florida under Judge Cannon, and they're not happy about that. They're appealing that in the Court of Appeals. So now Routh is responding, and he explains, this is irrelevant. It's not the standard that this court must evaluate, the abuse of discretion standard. The government's opening and final sentence are misleading. This is not discretionary. Federal recusal laws say that she does need to go, citing some other case law here. Now, indeed, contrary to the government's suggestion, there is precedent here. The government says that Routh cites no authority, but we have some authority. Legally, the government fails to acknowledge that recusal decisions are extremely fact-driven, and they're ignoring this. And they're not identifying anything that is factually analogous to this one. Now, the facts here are unprecedented. That's why there is no analogy. Here's the facts. This is from the defense team for Ryan Routh. They say, to briefly recap, a former president, Mr. Trump, is the alleged victim in this criminal case. Mr. Trump appointed, Your Honor, this judge to the federal bench. This court previously presided over cases where Mr. Trump was a party and issued some rulings that were favorable to him, including one dismissing a criminal case against him while on the campaign trail. Mr. Trump has repeatedly praised this court in its rulings. Mr. Trump would have the authority to appoint Your Honor to a position of power, like the Attorney General, which would be a good spot, were he to be president again, and or the Supreme Court, and given the low odds of this court being assigned 3 cases involving Mr. Trump, some have questioned whether the cases have even been assigned at random. So they're like, oh, crap. Well, dude, you shouldn't have tried to shoot Trump. I mean, hello. Like, obviously, it's not good. You got, like, the worst judge you could probably get. It's true. Despite vaguely referring to the circumstances of this case, the government does not actually identify them, let alone acknowledge how unique they are. The government likewise asserts in a conclusory manner that the motion does not present proper grounds for recusal. But again, the government does not identify what those grounds are. Rather than directly address them, the government simply cites 3 cases. Contrary to the government's suggestion, the cases don't defeat the motion. So first, the government cites an out-of-circuit case. They say you can't appoint somebody just based on recuse a judge based on who appointed them. They say we already told you that, but there's much more. Okay, Routh argued that this fact must be considered as one factor. It's not an ordinary situation. Trump nominated her and we tried to shoot him. Rather, Trump is the alleged victim of an assassination attempt. He has a personal stake in the outcome. And in the mind of the public, that Trump appointed Cannon may add the appearance of partiality, given that he has publicly praised Your Honor for rulings in his earlier case, and were Mr. Trump to become president again, he would have the authority to elevate her to a higher position. And second, the government cites the proposition that a ruling in the same or related case is not a basis for recusal, right? If you pass a ruling, you don't have to recuse yourself because of that ruling. You just appeal the ruling. But there is an exception to that rule. More importantly here, nothing precludes courts from considering judicial rulings with other factors. So not only did Trump appoint her, but plus the other rulings. The motion did not argue recusal only on that basis. Rather, the motion referred to the court's rulings in Trump's cases, primarily because Mr. Trump benefited from those rulings, right? So he gave him some benefits. At no point does the government deny those facts because they probably agree with them. They're like, yeah, we hated her rulings in those cases. They're like, they're right. Now, I disagree, right? I think that her rulings were just, and the defense team is just latching onto this. Like, this is a good defense tactic. Like, this is right. I mean, if you're playing defense on this case, you're making these arguments all day. Like, how can we get a fair shake here? This is crazy. Indeed, the government inexplicably ignores this aspect of the motion because they agree with them. It's not inexplicable. I mean, the defense attorney knows it's very explicable. It's because they're making arguments that they know the government agrees with, but they can't make them here. Third, the government cites the general proposition that an appearance of partiality must be supported by the facts. Mr. Routh agrees. That's why his motion is not based on speculation, but based on facts. Mr. Trump appointed Cannon. Trump has repeatedly and publicly praised her, would have the authority to promote her, and the odds of this court being randomly assigned 3 cases involving Trump were low. Which is interesting because, you know, ideally we have an impartial justice system. In an ideal world, we don't have that at all. Remember, Merchan got multiple Trump cases. Trump's getting hammered with bad assignments in New York. And they say that's just totally random and nothing to scoff at. So why would we be raising concerns here? Anyways, again, the government does not dispute any of these facts. So in short, the government does not accurately set forth any controlling standards. It does not dispute any of the objective and unique facts. And its conclusory response, consisting of 3 inapt citations, otherwise failed to explain why the disputed facts here might create an appearance of partiality in the mind of the public. And there's one new additional matter that Routh, the assassin, must raise. After Routh filed his motion, the government advised defense counsel for the first time that one member of the prosecution's team, Christopher Brown of the Justice Department, with the National Security Section in Miami, attended high school with Judge Cannon, and Your Honor attended Mr. Brown's wedding 9 years ago. It's unclear why the government believed that this information was important enough to share with us, but not important enough to include in its response. And it's unclear why, despite hundreds of able prosecutors in this district and around the country, the government elected to staff its team in this high-profile case with the prosecutor who enjoys a long-standing personal relationship with the presiding judge. In the mind of the public, this fact could further add to the appearance of partiality. It's a good motion. And these are from public defenders. I like it. From Christie, I mean, you know, I think that there's many layers here. So what the defense is doing right here is just mucking it up. And public defenders are quite good at that, right? So they're taking statements from the DOJ that are self-contradictory. In other words, their position in the Trump case, and they're using it against them here. And it's a good tactic. I don't think Cannon is going to recuse herself, nor should she. You know, in an ideal world, we would have no connections between anything, right? You'd have, I think, judges that are completely impartial and separated from, you know, any impartiality. But we just don't operate in that world anymore, unfortunately. Basically, everything has become politicized. And if Cannon is not on this case, I don't know that it necessarily changes the outcome in any way, shape, or form. Although we trust Cannon to hold the DOJ accountable, which is ultimately what we want, because we don't want the DOJ to also wrap the Ryan Routh case up in a bow and just say, it's just him and nobody else was involved. And the back and forth that he had flying all over the place, talking about funneling weapons to Ukraine, and his history of being flagged by customs and then ignored by Homeland and all of that stuff, right? In my mind, the DOJ can just make this Ryan Routh thing just kind of button this whole thing up. And Cannon historically has held them accountable in their prosecution. So I think she's perfectly appropriate for this case. But it's interesting that Ryan's trying to, and the public defenders are trying to get a new judge who might be a little bit more, I guess, democratic and supposedly liberal. Like, what's the strategy there? They're going to get an Obama judge who also wants Trump dead and so gives him a probation That's probably the theory, literally. Right? Get some other judge who also hates Trump and then get a lower sentence. Like, that's the tactic. So get rid of Cannon. From the public defender's perspective, that's the game plan. All right. We'll see if it works. Interesting filing. We'll keep our eye on it. Thanks for subscribing as we do. All right. And we've got one final segment, my friends, and then we'll jump into your comments and see what you say about all this. But here is this one. Election problems abound. We're in the middle of early voting, and I've got a bunch of stories queued up about problems that are happening. This one is in Georgia. This one is in Wisconsin. We've got fires in Arizona, and the list goes on. So let's get a preview of what is to come and what's happening right now. Reuters reported the Georgia Secretary of State's office said on Wednesday, this is Brad Raffensperger, had fended off a cyber attack aimed at crashing the websites states voters use to request absentee ballots. Sounds like the Uokava stuff. Interesting. No further information was provided. Now, there was no disruption to voters' ability to request ballots, said CNN. It slowed our systems down for a little bit, but it never stopped our systems from working, said Gabe Sterling, who oversees the elections in the battleground states. Early voting for the election began, and it's happening now. That's all we know on that one. We've also got problems in Wisconsin. Wisconsin slowed by label printing problems. During the first 2 days of early voting, some encountered long lines as clerks struggled to try to print the labels. Computer delays, long lines in the battleground state. Voters waited for as long as 3 hours on Tuesday to cast their ballots in West Bend. It's a city of 32,000 people. Voters had to wait about 90 minutes over here. Residents were not used to anything like it. Waiting in line for an hour is unheard of. Our super competent, capable government. Incredible. In-person early voting began on Tuesday in the state, will run through November 3rd. More than 97,000 residents cast their ballots in person, 18,000 more than the first day of early voting, when voters were more heavily relying on mail voting because of the COVID. This is why we got to get our ballots in, my friends, because if we show up on election day and you have to wait for 2 or 3 hours, you might have something else to do, right? A kid might have something, or friend or job or something. So we got to get them in. Part of me thinks this is by design, right? To sort of suppress the turnout. Little problems here and there. All right. So we'll see if they get it fixed, or if it could be incompetence or more, but we start seeing patterns, and here's what it looks like. In Arizona, we had a ballot fire at a P.O. box, man. An arrest has been made after a post-service mailbox was lit on fire early Thursday morning, damaging over a dozen ballots. Happened at 7th Avenue and Indian School, not far from here. Phoenix fire crews responded to the scene and extinguished the flames. 20 electoral ballots were damaged. Now, the postal inspector took possession of the damaged ballots, and they're working with postal inspectors. Look at this carnage right here. Says, in a separate short statement posted on her X account, Phoenix Mayor Kate Gallego said the suspect involved in the incident had been arrested. 35-year-old named Dieter Clothkorn, located and arrested for an outstanding and unrelated arrest warrant. He was interviewed. He said he committed the arson because he wanted to be arrested. All right. And his actions were not politically motivated and not related to the election. So just a crazy person, maybe. Clothkorn had been booked in jail for arson. And so more stuff is happening out there. Now, Stephen Richer, our loser Maricopa County recorder, said, we are waiting for details for law enforcement, but if you had your ballot and dropped it in that mailbox, get a new one, and get a new one quickly. So a lot of this, little things are happening. Meanwhile, President Trump is out there saying he's considering pardoning Hunter Biden.
Will you pardon Hunter Biden?
I wouldn't take it off the books. See, unlike Joe Biden, despite what they've done to me, what they've done after me so viciously, despite what, and Hunter's a bad boy. There's no question about it. He's been a bad boy.
That's true.
All you have to do is see the laptop from hell. But I happen to think it's very bad for the country. I think you know this, but most people don't because most people aren't of your talent. I could have gone after Hillary. I could have gotten Hillary Clinton very easily. And when they said lock her up, whenever they said lock her, they start shooting 30,000 people, lock her up. What did I do? I always said, take it easy, just relax. We're winning. Take it easy. I could have had her put in jail. And I decided I didn't want to do that. I thought it would look terrible if you had the wife of the President of the United States put in jail. I thought it would be very bad if you did that. And all
right, I don't know what's up with the audio, but you get the point. So Trump is saying maybe there will be some sort of pardon for Hunter Biden. See what Garrett Ziegler says about that one. All right, so meanwhile, we got Tish James and Chuck Schumer out there dancing it out on the streets of New York. Here's what that looked like. Tish shaking her tish on the streets of New York. Light it up, Liberty in New York. Democrat superstars out there. Look at that. Wow. Incredible. Get out the vote, Democrats. Right. Does Tish have her shoes on here? I don't know if she has her shoes on or not. Remember, she took those off in court, stinking up the whole building. But I don't know if she had them on over there or not. And, of course, Kamala is out saying Kamala-type things. Here she is after her devastating town hall with CNN last night. She's coming out to cope hard. Here's what it sounds like.
As for last night, yet again, Trump not showing up, refused to be a part of a CNN debate, and clearly his staff has been saying he's exhausted, and the sad part about that is he's trying to be president of the United States, probably the toughest job in the world, and he's exhausted. I said last night what I mean, which is the American people are being presented with a very serious decision.
It was brutal. We covered the whole thing on our members only stream, and she is crashing and burning in real time, and it's been a lot of fun to watch. And so, my friends, let's see what you say about all of this and more. It's a beautiful and an incredible day. What a lovely Thursday it is indeed. And we got some great friends, some great donos, some great comments. Thank you for being here and sending these in. Let's take a look at who's joining us. Tony Hay Munkets is here with some donos and some membos. Thank you, Tony Hay. Check this out. We've got 10 membos coming in. Tony Hay, including Pac Dean. What's up, MK? Todd Huber. What's up, Bucko? Sherry Smith Perry. We got Heather Fuller, Mark Manning, Andy Gorski, Tim V, Mark Griffiths in the house, courtesy of Tony Hay Munkets. Thank you, Tony Hay, for bringing in 10, 20 new membos. Guess who else? Oklahoma Freedom, welcome. Mimi and Bama. We got Wade Thompson, Craig G, Mr. T, Explore America, Robert Rogers, Sarah Smith, D. Watts, NV Cruiser, gifted membos in the house. What's up? Muffin Rando shouting out Tony Hay Munkets, says Tony Hay Munkets is the best. Voice of the People's here, bringing in 10 more membos. What's up, Voice? Voice has a show tonight, Off-Label Podcast. Clinton Rinaldi, Brandon Sutton, Daniel Wilmoth, Tom K. We got Zena B. Erroneous is here. Mac Art Studio, Creating with Purpose. Cool. The Incredible Hull, The Nasty Butler, and Dawn Marie WB in the house, gifted membos. Courtesy of Voice of the People. Hey, Eddie Block Films. What's up, Eddie Block? Says, on my way to Berkeley, do you think Brandon Straka will have any luck changing their liberal minds? I guess I'll see when I start live streaming from there in 3 hours. And so, my friends, you should check that out too. Eddie Block is going to be over there. He's on Locals and elsewhere. He's going to be there with Brandon Straka. I think they're doing some man on the streets, interviewing, debating. It depends. I think that there are some liberal minds that might be willing to awaken, but others, no, probably not. Hey, JDE, if anybody can do it, it's him. All right, what's up? JDE Corey says, I didn't put it in the mail. I did the line and checked my vote didn't change. I did my part. Now do yours too, my friends. Trump's path to victory starts with you. Thank you for that, JDE. It does. We all got to get it in. Let's get those votes in, baby. Hey, Nick Bosch, what's up? And Tina, thank you guys. Nick says, hit that like button, my dudes. Get this news out and help the algorithm. Thank you, Nick. Yeah, thanks for doing it. I do appreciate that. I don't shill the like button as much as I should, but I appreciate you guys supporting me in that absence. Thank you, Tina. Thanks, Nick. Hey, Alice says, I have a meeting to go to. I have to listen to your answer later. I listened to the piece about Emhoff's domestic abuse. The worst about him, in my opinion, is his stake in BlackRock. Why is that never discussed in the news? Probably because it's not an unusual thing. I think probably a lot of people have some stake in, big international conglomerates. And not most people, but a lot of people do. So in other words, it's not by itself criminal or nefarious. Domestic abuse is always, nefarious and illegal. But BlackRock, as pernicious and powerful as they are, of course, they're still legal. And I imagine that people don't understand the concern of that. Like, they don't understand the implications of what BlackRock is doing. And I think BlackRock probably owns the news. Has a big stake in much of the news. So they wouldn't, that would be against their interests. Hey, what's up? Zone Girl is here. Zone Girl says, yesterday was my year anniversary. Zone Girl. And I re-upped my account. I saw that, Zone Girl. I saw that. Thank you for doing that again. Mother of a happy 3-month-old baby. Sounds like that's a real baby then. Amazing. So congratulations on your newborn. Wow, 3 months old, man. That's amazing. Yeah, they're extra scary when they're that little. Thank you for that, Zone Girl. Thanks for re-upping. Really glad to have you here for another year. We've got American Trucker. Says, I posted yesterday about the ACLJ. I wanted to explain. Oh, yeah, I remember that. I wanted to explain they have a bank of attorneys across the country that if anyone has any harassment issue, any issue with their ballot, maybe a poll worker tells you they cannot ask if you're a legal citizen, have identification, they're asking that you please reach out to them, okay? The website is aclj.org/help, aclj.org/help. This is a great announcement. They cover all the costs. They're just trying to make this election as fair as we can. And yes, they support Donald Trump. Thanks, Rob. Thank you, American Trucker. Check it out, aclj.org/help. Good promo there. And I appreciate that work. So keep that in mind. If you're having any problems, that's where to go. This one came in. Yeah, ACLJ. This is it. Thanks, Donut, for clipping this for us. Yeah, be a champion of life, liberty, and freedom. Join ACLJ. Cool. Right on. Good. We need lawyers. Sheila Poo, a million hugs to you. Thank you for bringing in 10 membos, Sheila. Guess who's here? Ray Gould, Storytime with Knuckles, Joe White, Jody Plocher, Marco Twisted, You Ain't Wrong, Denard Nixon, Crypto Crackhead, Cat Nurse, and Asiara Fan Mike in the house, courtesy of Sheila Poo. A million hugs to you. Thank you, Sheila. Tara Rayner. Oh my goodness. Okay, prayers for a 9-day-old grandson. Oh my gosh. So prayers for this little fella. Tara Rayner says, please pray for my 9-month-old grandson being airlifted to Edmonton. Has meningitis. Sorry for a sad post, but the prayer army here can pray a miracle. Wow. All right, that is just terrible. 9 days old on this planet and already in the middle of a fight. But when he emerges victorious from this thing, it's going to be a miracle. And it's going to be a great story and a victory for his new life. So Tara, prayers coming your way, my friends. If you got them, send them over to Tara. And 9-day-old grandbaby in the Tara Rayner household. Thanks, Tara. Nitty Linny says, we're sorry, we won't be able to interview Mr. Routh. We've already had him cremated. He's like, he was just alive yesterday. He's burned. If you wanted to interview him. Yeah, but he's dead. How'd he die? In the incinerator. No, but like before you put him in. No. He died in the incinerator. That's what happened. We're the DOJ. We already got everything we needed. Thank you for that, Nitty Linny. Hilarious. Hey, Tony. Hey, Munkets. bringing in one new membo. LB is in the house. Thank you, Tony Hay, for bringing in LB. Gloria is bringing in Be Cool. Thank you, Gloria B, for being a membo, bringing in a membo. Hey, Jack Mack is here. What's up, Jack? Good to see you. Bringing in 5 membos. L. Bracknell, T. Ross, Misbehavin', Barry Wenzel, Daniel Hobbs, Polyphus is in the house. Thank you, Jack Mack. Great to see you, Jack. Hopefully you've been well. Goofy for Jesus is here. Says, be a VIP. Vote in person. Hugs, y'all. Hugs to you, Goofy for Jesus. Whatever you got to do to get those votes in, let's get those votes in. Hey, Sheila. Thank you, Sheila. Bringing in 5 more membos. Oakview is in the house. P-Dubs Designs, Patrick ESQ. What's up, Patrick ESQ? Dennis SoCal is here. N. Rad. Laura Elizabeth. Gifted membos courtesy of Sheila Poo. A million hugs to you. Hey, Jack, another one. Good to see you, Jack. Says, Trump's exhausted? Hilarious. Kamala has never admitted skipping out on the September 4 Fox debate. She wasn't ready. She was still hiding out, memorizing her lines, and back in early September. Rob 2028. That sounds like it should happen. We'll fix this country immediately, starting with the DOJ. That's what I just want 5 minutes in that office. 5 minutes as power with the Attorney General power. Just 5 minutes. That's all I need. Don't need much time. I just need to know where the J6 floor is. Figure that out. 5 minutes. We'll get a lot of stuff done together. Looking forward to it. We'll see. I have to be Trump's press secretary first, that'd be fun too. And then the AG and then president. Well, I got a long road ahead. All right. Thanks, Jack, for the endorsement. Oh, gosh. What a world that would be. All right. So thank you, Jack. Yeah. Trump is on fire right now. Okay. Trump is all pistons are firing right now. Kamala looks rough. Hey, Rocky says, would pardoning Hunter take away any Fifth Amendment protections for answering subpoenas for future prosecutions of others? In other words, can he be compelled to testify against? That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know, Rocky Water. What a good question that is. In other words, could the DOJ subpoena him and say, we're granting you total immunity, but you don't even need immunity because you've been pardoned for that? I don't know. Good question, Rocky. Complicated. I have to think it through. Neuro D says, Trump Vance 2024. Trump Vance 2024 from Neuro D. And here was a picture of Kamala. Yeah, good call. Rocky says, cheers to FLAG. I wonder what PA's AG is up to these days. This old guy says, 43 Republicans and 13 Democrats in the Senate confirmed Judge Eileen Cannon. Are the 13 Dems a good reason to have her removed? This is all just ridiculous from this old guy. Hey, Wojo says, it's only once every 4 years of your time. Don't be lazy. Vote because it will affect the next 4 years. You're right about that, Wojo. And I know that we're not lazy here, but we just want to make sure that nothing comes up. That's the thing. That nothing interferes with your ability. Hey, Sheila Poo says, if you're getting passed over for gifting, check your setting. YouTube might be pulling a fast one on all you OGs. Yeah, so that's a great recommendation. If you're not getting those membos, there is a setting in there. So you can turn that setting on so that you can allow your account to be gifted. Thanks, Sheila, for the reminder and for bringing so many new friends in and for explaining how it works. Jason Lane says, so what happens if Kamala chooses not to certify the results in the likely event that Trump wins? Well, she really has no choice, right? Her role now is only ceremonial. They made that change after Trump won, and then they stole it from him. So the vice president really doesn't certify anything. The vice president just stamps whatever is delivered to them. So that would be illegal and insurrectionary. But it's a real concern because they have the power. What if they don't leave and they just coup the country like they blamed Trump for doing? Hey, Cougar Tracks, what's up? Thank you, Cougar. Says, thanks for having a truth channel, Robert. Thank you, Cougar. Thanks for watching it, Cougar. Thanks for being a membo. Thanks for supporting us. Thanks for being interested in the truth and watching conversations about the truth. It's what we endeavor to attain here, and we're glad to have you here. Hey, Fred Pedamonte says ACLJ is Jay Sekulo's firm. That's a serious attorney, and they're doing serious work out there. So if you run into anything, make sure you check them out. Goofy for Jesus is here. Says, watching Eddie Block tonight. Love his work. Eddie Block in the house. We'll be there with Brandon Straka. Libby T, thank you, Libby. What a nice thing to say. Says, thanks for all you do. Thank you, Libby. Libby, thank you for being a member. I know you've been a member for a long time. Thanks for stopping by so often and supporting us the way you do. We've got Milo Phone Bill says, happy birthday, Dana in the house. Happy birthday to Dana and our locals. Lurking and working too. We got some lurkers and workers and birthday celebrators in the house. Thank you, Milo, for shouting out Dana. What's up, Stan Cottrell? Says, FBI asserting jurisdiction didn't work out so well in Die Hard 1. Yeah, I think that's the one that I think of when I use that example. Remember they came in there and yeah, Nakatomi Tower, right? Nakatomi Plaza. Is that the one? Is that Die Hard 1? The best one ever? Yeah, I think that was right? They came in there like, we're going to take it over. We're going to take the helicopter. They went up to the helicopter and they ended up blowing the roof out. They got totally, without John McClane there to save the day, it's going to be a big problem. Yeah, and they had, what was his name? Hans. Ho, ho, ho. Now I have a machine gun. Find him. All right, so thank you, Stan. Yeah, it didn't work out well for the feds. They were even incompetent in that movie. Unbelievable. All right, let's see who's joining us on X. Thank you for those amazing donos and that tremendous conversation, my friends. We're going to need to find some more FBI guys. Oh, another great line. Welcome to the party, pal. Great lines, great movie. I have to watch that again on Christmas since it's one of my favorite Christmas movies of all time. All right. Who else do we have? Fred Pedamonte says, having Veltri investigate the Trump administration is like having Hitler investigate the Holocaust. A lot of Hitler comments as of late. But Torrin is here. Here's one of Trump as a colonialist. Trump will go down in American history as the most significant citizen in defining and solidifying the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights. There's a lot of truth to that. I mean, Trump is causing a whole realignment of American law. New precedents are being shattered. New things are happening that have never happened before. And so it's just bedlam now. JT, thank you. Says, thanks, Rob. And Ray again says, awesome show. Thank you, Ray, again. You guys are awesome. So thanks for swinging by on X and saying hello over there. It's always fun to see our friends over there. And you can follow us right there on that account. All right. And so, my friends, we are going to go over to locals. We're going to hang out. New membos. If you're looking for some extra content, if you're looking for some additional stuff that we don't talk about here, well, check it out on the morning stream for our membos. We had a great stream this morning, and it was a lot of fun. We talked about the Kamala town hall and other things. And so be sure to check that out. But my friends, that is going to be it for us on the day. We're going to wrap it up there. Head on over to locals for our members only after party to debrief, chill a little bit, see who's joining us. We'd love to have you join us. But if not, we're going to wrap it up. My friends, thanks to the mods. Thank you to Donut. Thank you to K Bean. Thank you to Carrie B. Thank you to John McGarvey, our mods, modding the fort down for us, keeping things nice and orderly. I saw Playing Hooky, I think, was here today. Great to see everybody. But my friends, that is going to be it for us on the day. We are coming back tomorrow to get into it again. And in order to do that, we're going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.